Well, good morning and welcome to the third event in the Provincial Leaders Speaker Series presented by Manulife. My name is Ian McLean and I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we do live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples as we seek a renewed relationship based on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you'll join us in fostering a positive environment here today to ensure a safe and welcoming space for all. I'd like to take a moment to just thank our sponsors and partners for today's event. Without their support, these types of programs and events would not be possible. So thank you to our title sponsor, Manulife, our prestige sponsor, Deloitte, our platinum sponsor, Google, silver sponsors, Clack, our bronze sponsor, the KW Association of Realtors, and to our event partner, my colleague and friend, Shakiba Shayani of the Guelph Chamber of Commerce. And thank you to our host today, the Crown Plaza KW. Please join us in thanking these incredible partners in this program. Just a couple of introductions. Mayor Barry Verbanovic was here for a roundtable just a few minutes ago, had to leave to do the exciting work of being at City Council today, so he did not able to join us for today's event. And attending virtually today from my board of directors, our chair, Adam Smith from my IT guy, and our chair-elect, Scott Gilfillan of PwC. And thank you to everyone joining us virtually today as well. I think Andrew's here. Good. I'd like to welcome Andrew Kugler from Manulife to introduce today's speaker. Andrew.
Thanks, Ian. Good morning, everyone. So on behalf of Manulife, we are proud to be sponsoring the Provincial Leaders Speaker Series once again. Manulife has more than 8,000 employees in Ontario, and 1/3 of those are based at our Canadian headquarters in the Waterloo region. We take pride in our people, products, and services, such as insurance protection, well-being offerings, retirement, and wealth management solutions. And we recognize the threats posed by climate change to our business, public health, and the livelihoods of the communities in which we operate. In 2021, Manulife announced a net zero emissions commitment to support climate goals worldwide. Our sustainability strategy supports our mission of making decisions easier and lives better. I now have the pleasure of introducing today's speaker. Mike Schreiner is an outspoken advocate for local food and water, affordable housing, small businesses, and mental health. He is a proponent of cooperating across party lines and putting people before politics. Since he was elected as leader of the GPO in 2009, Mike has put the party on the political map and saw it through tremendous growth in membership and public recognition. He passed Ontario's first ever green law, which protects electric vehicle drivers, while introducing other bills to conserve drinking water, get big money out of politics, and remove routine sick notes. Prior to his role as leader of the GPO, Mike was a successful entrepreneur and small business owner and one of the early advocates of the local food movement. He founded multiple initiatives including Local Food Plus, Wow Foods, and Earth Dance Organics to connect sustainable farmers with Ontario households. Mike and his wife Sandy and their 2 daughters are very active in the local community and spend their free time gardening, hiking, fishing, and cycling. Please join me in welcoming Mike Schreiner.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, Mike.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for that kind introduction, Andrew.
I should say that we were supposed to do this 2 weeks ago.
That's right.
2 weeks ago, and just to put a not too fine a point that COVID's not over yet. Mike called me at 10:45 on Sunday night. We were supposed to be in this very room at 8:30 the next morning to say that he had come in contact with somebody at a meeting, fully masked, but had been in a meeting with someone who had called him to inform that he had tested positive for full-blown COVID. And so it didn't take us long to figure out the right thing to do would be to reschedule. And notwithstanding what the advice may have been from others, we took a look at it and said the right thing for us to do. And I thank Mike for his leadership in saying the right thing to do was to reschedule. And thank you to you and your staff for finding the time for us to do it. And we are doing this event with the support of our sponsors and partners here in Waterloo Region. We had an opportunity to have a roundtable just before we, for the last hour. And we're doing this in partnership with not only Shakiba and the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, who you know well, but Shakiba and Greg and I, the three chambers, work very closely together, have for many years. And we are, many of these questions will come from community members, whether it's the KW Association of Realtors or CLAC or the municipalities, but many of them will come from our Best Waterloo, the Business Economic Support Team of Waterloo Region, the two Chambers of Commerce, Communitech, Waterloo EDC, and Explore Waterloo, and my colleague Michelle Sarens here representing Best Waterloo today. Let's start with healthcare. I mean, we're going to go through a series of issues that I think are really important that not only to business but to our community. Healthcare investment. I think what we know is that there are many parts of the healthcare system that have been exposed as being weak or brittle or not fully supported. That's long-term care. It's nursing. It's hospitals, mental health, and we know too that, with the exception of the first lockdown, the lockdowns have been directly related to the capacity of the healthcare system. So I want to start with one, and we'll come to all-day two-way goal because you've already given that ethanol pledge. But here in Waterloo Region, we're one of the fastest-growing parts of the country. Our healthcare resources are overstretched just about every day. In the next 20 years, we're going to have massive growth in our population to be somewhere north of 900,000. We also have a great number of citizens that are over 75, and our region has the fewest per capita beds in the province. We haven't had a new build. We've had a renovation to Cambridge, but haven't had a new build in over 50 years. And I guess the question for us is St. Mary's and Grand River Hospital are working together. They're going through the process. There is an application in right now. We're hoping to positive news from the province to do the planning grant to get the information that's required to get to a decision of a new hospital. But ultimately, this region needs a new hospital. It's an economic driver, and I guess the new ethanol pledge when you come to KW is, will you commit to supporting the steps along the way to get a new hospital for this region that is definitely underserved?
Well, first of all, Ian, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me to join you. And thanks everyone for being here today. And thanks for accommodating me. I've always felt that honesty and transparency is the best way to go in politics and business. And I've always chosen the right road and not the easy road. And so I called you on the Sunday night and I was advised that I was a low risk contact with somebody, but I felt that it was better and most responsible to let you know. And especially because the next day was the very first day that the mask mandates were being lifted in Ontario. And I knew it was your first in-person event. And I thought, let's be safe rather than sorry.
Yes.
And so I think I texted you on Thursday later that week and I said 5 negative rapid tests later. I think I'm safe and I can go talk to people again. But I wanted to be safe, and that's just the right thing to do. And I just want to thank so many Ontarians who have done the right thing throughout this pandemic. We wouldn't have gotten through it to this point, and you're right, it's not over, if people really hadn't come together and worked hard to take care of each other. When it comes to healthcare capacity, I'm just going to say I support a new hospital across the entire innovation corridor region. We know Brampton needs a new hospital. We know Guelph needs a new hospital, and I'm working on that proposal with Guelph General. And we know Waterloo Region needs a new hospital as well. We absolutely need more healthcare capacity in the province. I think COVID has shown the cracks in the system, but we have to recognize that pre-COVID, we were experiencing hallway medicine and huge wait times. So the issue of healthcare capacity is one that predates COVID, but COVID has really shown that we absolutely have to invest in more healthcare capacity. But here's the bottom line. This is what I want to be really clear about. We can build all the buildings and install all the beds we want, but if we don't have people to staff those beds and to staff those buildings, we won't have the capacity we need. And that is why I've been working so hard to tell the Ford government to just repeal Bill 124, pay nurses and other frontline healthcare workers the fair wages they deserve. And it's not just wages, folks. It is total compensation is capped for our healthcare heroes. And so that means if they're trying to negotiate things like access to mental health services, that's capped as well as part of the total compensation cap. And so I don't know how you can go 2 years calling our frontline healthcare workers heroes and then tell them they're going to essentially have to take a pay cut, because when inflation is at 5%, and you're being capped at 1% total compensation increase, it's just not right. And so we have to invest in the caring professions. We also have to put more investment in ways to keep people out of hospital. So that means investing in primary health care, ensuring that we particularly have enrollment in multidisciplinary family health teams and nurse practitioner-led clinics so people can get the care they need in community. We absolutely have to be investing in home and community care, especially for elders. And I can tell you, almost every senior I know does not want to be in a long-term care home. They want to age in place and they want to age at home. And in order to do that, we have to make sure we have the PSW and nursing staff to provide those home care visits and that home care support. And we need to make sure we pay them a fair wage. And we actually cover their mileage in between visiting clients so people can age at home. And yes, there will still be a need for long-term care homes because of the complex needs that some people have. And let's treat those homes as a home, not as an institution. We cannot institutionalize our elders. We need to care for them in homes. That is why we've been advocating for 4 hours of care, minimum standard for all elders in long-term care homes now, not 4 years from now, and that we ensure that our long-term care system prioritizes people over profits. And I want to close with one thing, and I'll let you do the update. I'm proud to say, and I'm happy that you mentioned mental health. I'm proud to say the Ontario Green Party is the first party in Ontario history to put forward a standalone mental health strategy. And it's about making the investments to expand mental health services to be covered under OHIP. Mental health is health. And everything is not okay in this province, especially when it comes to mental health. We need to make the investments to ensure that people have access to affordable, complex care, and that we especially make sure our children have that access. 28,000 young people on a wait list for mental health services right now. The average wait time for youth mental health services is 18 months. It can be as long as 2.5 years. So imagine showing up at the emergency room with a broken arm, and the doctor says, oh yeah, we know how to help take care of that arm, but you got to come back in 6 months and then we'll take care of it for you. Like, that would be ridiculous. Like, that would be completely unacceptable. So why are we telling young people? I met a young person, the Main Street of Guelph, a couple years ago, and I said, how are you doing? And he said, I'm doing okay. Because I just got access to a youth suicide worker last night. But it would have been a nice 8 months ago when I was thinking of killing myself if I had access to that worker back then. And so I'm just thankful that I'm still here and I'm now getting help. That's unacceptable, and we can fix it if we make the investments to do it.
Well, I remember you joined me on Kitchener Today a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about that. And I thought that's innovative, and it's again one of those pieces of the puzzle that I think COVID has laid bare. I do want to just reiterate, I am supportive of the fact that there have been some positive changes in the healthcare system that need to stay. Primary care, I mean, we need more doctors. We still are here in Waterloo Region working on behalf of the region. We have close to 20,000 people who still don't have access to a family physician. We work with the hospitals on specialists, or work in support of them, doing the specialist recruitment. And of course, the hospital isn't building the hospital for the bricks and mortar. It's because we don't have the space to do the work and to have the beds to treat the people that the region that have need here in the region of Waterloo. But it's also leveraging our connections with our friends from the tech community, from the medtech space, where we're doing innovation right here in Waterloo region already in our 60-year-old decrepit hospitals with our innovators. So it's good for public health. It's good for a new approach to healthcare, but it's also taking into account the new innovations that are coming right here from Waterloo region. Listen, I want to continue on in the COVID thing to this extent. And, we told the story this morning. COVID's not gone. It's not done with us. We may be done with it, but it's not done with us. I want to talk about what reopening looks like. We've lifted some mandates. We're already seeing the case counts going up. It seems to be a new variant. All are worrying signs amidst the positivity of the economy's opening up and people are feeling a little more confident that we are getting towards the end. But what's your vision for this stage of COVID? Because there's still a lot of disease around. It's, whether the wave is here now or whether it comes in the fall, there will be another one. And our business economic support team have been saying for a long time, we need to have, the baseline here is the province can't shut its economy down again. Cannot do that. And we have the right tools to make sure that we can avoid doing that. So, I guess the question is, do you support free rapid antigen screening kits for not only the public, but certainly businesses for the next, for us, we think this is mostly through 2023. We need to have this for the next year and a half, rapid screening, possible seasonal mask mandates when we get into flu season, surveillance of wastewater and all those sorts of things. Are we going to pay attention to those and make changes along the way? Is that what you and your party are committed to?
Yeah, we have to keep people safe to keep our economy open. And I can tell you, many of you probably know I'm a longtime small business owner. And as a small business owner, I'm a numbers guy. I believe in looking at the metrics, the data, and following the best advice from the experts, in this case, public health experts. And so flying blind and hoping COVID goes away is not a plan. That is not a plan to keep our economy open. And so I absolutely am committed to making sure we use the tools in our toolbox to ensure that we keep our economy open. So what are those tools? Well, we have to have data and information, and testing is vital to that, whether it's wastewater testing, PCR testing, or rapid antigen tests. So when the government announced that they were going to stop distributing rapid antigen tests, I was the first person who spoke out against it, and I was doing all kinds of media against it. And I was joking with my team that 3 hours after that, the premier reversed course on it. So I don't know if I get credit for that or somebody else gets credit on that, but I was glad the premier made the right decision and extending that. But extending it was it July 1st? I think we should extend it at least till the end of the year. I would say well into next year, because we know that there's going to be additional waves. We know that testing and surveillance is key to having the information we need. I think bringing in paid sick days is going to be vital. And I know as a small business owner, sometimes you're like, oh, how do we afford that? But how do we afford not to keep our staff safe and our customers safe and our workers safe? And nobody in this province should have to choose between whether they stay home and take care of themselves, or have to go into work sick in order to pay the bills. I think it's in everybody's best interest that people know they can afford to stay home and take care of themselves and protect their coworkers, their customers, their colleagues. Absolutely, we're going to have to look at whether it's appropriate to bring back masks when we need it. It provides a layer of protection. And as far as I'm concerned, we need to be providing those kinds of layers of protection to avoid any future lockdowns. That's what we absolutely have to avoid. And can I look back on one thing? I'm hoping we never have to lock down again. But if we ever do, it needs to be done in a fair way. Never again should we lock down small local businesses while we keep big box stores open. And nothing against big box stores, but like, let's have a level playing field for small businesses. And I think the least we can do for small businesses, especially, is to ensure, one, that the Ontario Tourism Grant, that the money actually starts flowing, because those businesses were the first to close and the last to open. We have to make sure that the Ontario Small Business Support Grant actually gets to the businesses who need it. I can't tell you how many businesses my constituency office, I guarantee MPPs all over the province, fought in the first round, the second round to get funding. And now the third round of the grant, I'm fighting for small businesses who like had to shut down, desperately need the help. And I can tell you, when it comes to economic recovery, it will recover so much faster if we're recovering from businesses that already have a proven profitable track record than if we, allow those businesses to go out of business and have to start from scratch again. So let's support our communities. Let's support that existing economy, because it's going to help us recover faster.
I've already taken the new ethanol pledge on the hospital or new regional hospital here, but I want to touch on something that my colleague Shakiba and Guelph and Brampton and all the communities from Waterloo region, including Cambridge, right into Toronto, is all day two-way go. And I know you've been a big advocate for that. It seems to be cemented. The work is happening, but we, it's sort of like the show me state. We want to see that it actually gets done. You're still committed to that and expanding service and having those frequencies get down to 75 minutes or less to move people back and forth between not only Waterloo region, but right along the corridor, because it's going to be incredibly important, not only for for greening of the economy, but for just moving people and ending gridlock. So see Jennifer Sabera from Simplify Supply Chains was with us this morning. Getting goods to market means that we can't have commuters clogging the 401, and we got to give them options. So I just wanted to get the confirmation that you're still on board with all day two-way go.
Absolutely. And I think it was at one point we were promised all day two-way go back in 2014. Yeah. Although it was going to be delivered in 2014. So the promise was probably like 2010. Now we're told 2024, and I am going to continue to fight for that. And this is one, we talk about, I think, the importance of working collaboratively across party lines, like Mike Harris in Kitchener-Conestoga, who's obviously part of the government caucus. He and I've had numerous conversations about just making sure that commitment is steadfast and will actually happen. But I think we have to be looking at expanding transit opportunities in the region. And I've been a real strong advocate of just the Grand River watershed transit plans that people are talking about that would directly connect, Brantford, Cambridge, Guelph, KW. I think the fastest way we can roll that out, obviously, is through electrified buses. I mean, the fact that you cannot get a direct bus, if I could, between Guelph and KW, or Guelph and Cambridge, or Guelph in Hamilton, or Guelph and Brantford, or any one of those cities, like, to me, makes absolutely no sense. And so if we're going to, free up our existing highway capacity for truck transit, which, unfortunately we can't put a lot of those goods on a GO train or a bus, but we can certainly put people on those buses and move people efficiently around this region. And it's not only good for the environment, which we all know will be an important part of crushing climate pollution and meeting our climate objectives, but it's also good for people's pocketbooks. And so we have to make sure that transit's affordable. One of the reasons I've been really advocating that we, over the next 3 months, just with the rising cost of living, cut transit fares in half. To one, make life more affordable for people, and transit really disproportionately benefits the people who have lower incomes in our society. But it's also a great way to start getting people back on transit, because we've already got all this transit infrastructure. And, I realize, I understand why, because of COVID, why, transit ridership is down. But you know what? Let's keep mask mandates on transit. Mm-hmm. Let's extend them past the April 28th deadline, and let's get people on safe, reliable, affordable transit, connecting them not only with Toronto, but through the entire region.
Yeah, I think one of the pieces is we had our LRT and the previous council got it done. We've got it up and running. We've got the plans to connect it to Cambridge, and our two chambers in particular, well, Cambridge and KW said need to get this done, but it only works if we get it to Cambridge. That's another big investment. But also how the LRT is going to connect to those intermodal so that we can get you can start somewhere and actually end up at your destination, whether it's Toronto or Guelph, other things. So that's really important. I would say 10 or 15 years ago, transit was a left-wing, very fringe. It's not anymore. It is essential for business. It's essential for moving workers to their jobs and getting goods to market. So you'll be hearing more from us once we have the final plan from regional council on the route and the funding, because we've done our fair share here in Waterloo region by paying for the first part of LRT, and it's we'll be looking for both the province and the feds to step to the plate soon enough. Listen, want to go to, and you and I have talked about this. I think you were joining me, as I say, 2 weeks ago, and we talked about energy policy, the environment, and the green agenda and the green economy, and they're interlinked. Affordability of electricity is a huge issue for business, especially if you're a high consumption manufacturer, as an example. The reliability of the energy mix that we have is really important. When we just talked about transit, we're electrifying all of the tracks to Toronto. That's the goal. That's what GO wants to do, so that we can have the opportunity to do electrify and have electric trains, all electrification of trains all the way to Toronto. And the full commitment, and we've talked about this as well, the move of all of the car makers here in Ontario to EV or electric vehicles. It all requires, there's a whole bunch of things that need to happen for it to come to pass. So I want to maybe give you, and I'll cut you off after a couple of minutes, but give me your vision of how all those things can come together, because we need to consider how we generate enough, having a reliable power generation sector, how we get that electricity to where it needs to be, which is the distribution, the necessity for business to have affordability of that, and consumers, all of which is going to put lots of pressure on our capacity. So I want to kind of hear how you put all three of those pieces together.
Well, first of all, if we're going to meet our climate obligations and help people save money at the same time, we have to electrify everything, especially our transportation systems, but also our buildings. And we're going to have to build out infrastructure to do that, particularly charging infrastructure. But when it comes to on the generation side of things, so I want to be really clear. The Ontario Greens support utilizing our existing nuclear capacity to its end of life. It's 60% of our supply right now. We can't get rid of that. But we are fundamentally opposed to the current government's plans to increase gas-fired electricity by 300% over the next decade, that would increase climate pollution, by 300%. The cost of that electricity is 10 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour. Right now, the cost of renewable energy, particularly utility-grade solar and wind, is between 3 and 7 cents a kilowatt hour. So as we expand capacity, we should be investing in renewables where Ontario can have a huge competitive advantage. And these discussions we had 10 years ago when renewable energy was much more expensive, like that's old news. Like the cost of solar has gone down 97% in the last 10 years. We should be capitalizing on that. We have people from Manulife here. I think the strategy is you buy low and you sell high. Well, we bought renewables high and now we're getting out of renewables when the price is low. I don't think that's a successful strategy. And so Ontario is so well positioned to make this work. And right now, one of the things we can do right now to help make it work faster even is we have a lot of surplus generation in Ontario right now that we're selling at a loss, mostly to the United States. Why not take that surplus generation, make it available to Ontarians, particularly at night when demand is really low at a very low cost, that they can be filling up their electric vehicles and can be filling up battery storage for industry to use during the day when the prices are much higher because of supply and demand. So there's a lot of innovations we can do right now to better utilize our existing supply in a way that's more affordable for people.
I struggle sometimes with the notion that solar and wind can replace some base load power, though. I mean, so keeping nuclear, and that's because that you can't get rid of that and still have the province turn on lights at any time during the day. But how would solar and wind be able to replace some of that base load power that we have? I mean, and I'm talking specifically about the gas, right? You're saying, we need base load. What is that base load? And as we increase the number of electric vehicles, the electrification of the transportation system and the heating system, that has a huge. I mean, that excess capacity we have now isn't that going to get sucked up by this transition?
So baseload power right now in Ontario is supplied by nuclear and hydroelectric. I'm a big supporter of water power. I think we should expand water power and maximize it, about probably 5,000 more megawatts of water power capacity in Ontario. And that's exactly why I'm saying we can't get rid of nuclear right now. But fossil gas is primarily used as peaker plants during the day, mostly in the summer when our air conditioners are turned on. Why would we invest in that high cost polluting power when we can invest in lower cost renewables who can cover that gap? And there's also huge opportunities right now, particularly with what's called bidirectional charging. We can literally turn our electric vehicles into mini power plants, charging overnight when we have all this excess capacity at a very low cost. And then during the day when you're at work, plugging into a grid that you can actually put power back into the grid when we need it the most and make a little bit of money even. So you can literally turn every Ontarian into a possible little mini power plant. So there's and this is all existing technologies. We're not even talking about, science fiction here. So let's get smart. Let's make smart strategic investments, and let's go after the lowest cost, cleanest sources of power, which will help us have a competitive advantage in global marketplaces, and it will help us meet our climate obligations at the same time and help Ontarians save money at the pumps. Because I can tell you, to fill up my electric vehicle at home overnight costs me about $5. To go to a high-speed charging station, about $15. Most people are paying well over $100 right now to put gas in their car. Let's make electric vehicles affordable for people so they can take advantage of the low-cost fuel that electricity provides for them.
We're going to pivot to housing and affordability because that's a huge issue. I had the chair for the Council for Clean and Reliable Energy on the radio show last Friday, and there are some other pieces here as we start to do the planning on housing. And I think there's some councils have passed resolutions, I think in Toronto, of saying they want to get rid of gas plants as an example and transition all to electricity. And I said, well, how would that be possible? And he said, well, it's possible if you'd have to increase the capacity, but just in Toronto alone, 3 times what Ontario already generates right now, if you did that overnight. So the importance of this is doing things in sequence of like, how can you afford in the short term? Because between now and the medium term, there's a whole bunch of things that need to happen. And it's specific to housing, because that's another big between transportation and housing is where a huge chunk of the and manufacturing supply chain as well. Those are where big chunks of the electricity generated go. Let's talk about the cost of housing, right? So if you layer things on to say we want to green the grid, and it impacts the cost of housing, because what we know is that there's I think just last couple of weeks ago, the average home in Waterloo region, or it may have been the province, but certainly in Waterloo region, has gone over $1 million. I mean, it puts home ownership out of reach of most, maybe. The task force on housing the province just had, when we talked about it in this morning's session, the limit exclusionary zoning and having as right of to have some more density in single family or lower density locations, residential lots. Is that something that, I mean, it makes sense. I think our friends from the KW Association of Realtors would say, you want low hanging fruit. Sounds to me like there would be an opportunity to have more units still in what is effectively low density that would fit in with neighborhoods that would make some sense. I mean, I think you're in support of that. Why do you think it wasn't included?
Yeah. I can't speak for the government. I don't know why they aren't addressing the housing crisis with the urgency that's required. I mean, I feel like we have a whole generation of Ontarians who are feeling abandoned right now because they're worried they're never going to be able to own a home. We have thousands of Ontarians who can't even afford their rent. I mean, in many places in this province, you cannot rent a one, including in KW, Guelph, Brampton, Toronto. I mean, the list goes on. You can't rent a one-bedroom apartment on a minimum wage salary. Like, you just can't, there just isn't any available. And so we have to recognize how awful the housing crisis is and how urgently we need to act. So what are some quick things to do? I think the Ontario Greens Housing Affordability Plan, which the Toronto Star and others have called a masterclass plan, looks at how we can engage the private sector in creating more housing options for people by making it easy for duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, laneway housing, tiny homes, cottage homes on lots to quickly ramp up supply within our existing built environment so it's more efficient and affordable, requires less municipal infrastructure to service, and then creates more housing options for people, creates more pathways to home ownership because it provides some revenue options for homeowners to be able to help cover their mortgages off. And then we also have to engage the public sector. And this is something I think we have to be honest with Ontarians about. In the mid-1990s, both the federal and provincial government got out of housing. At one point in this country, 20% of housing starts were nonprofit, co-op, or social housing that were really affordable for people. Federal government's now come to the table with some money. The province has to come to the table with some money as well and say, we are going to help fund nonprofits, co-ops, and social housing providers to build housing that people can actually afford. And finally, I just want to say we have far too many people in this province who don't have a home tonight, don't have anywhere to go tonight. And that is why the Ontario Greens are committed over the next decade to building 60,000 permanent supportive housing spaces with wraparound mental health, addiction, and other supports. And we know that for every $10 of public money invested in permanent supportive housing, it saves us $22 in healthcare costs, criminal justice costs, social service costs. It's an investment that any business owner would love to have that kind of return on investment. We can improve our communities, we can improve people's quality of life, and we can save money if we're willing to put the money on the table to invest in a housing first strategy for people.
I guess one of the things when it comes to new builds, right? There's the struggle of, or the competing interest of we want affordability and supporting families so that they whatever choice of housing is right for them they can do. Investors, the private sector is going to do the vast majority of the housing shortage need to be done, so they have interests. Then you have, obviously, as you just said, and there does need to be, and I think all levels of government, you heard Barry Verbanovic this morning in our session talk about the importance of housing across the thing. And I think others mentioned that as well. It's really important to have that mix, but everyone's got to be at the table. So how do you, I mean, you've got competing interests between developers or landowners who are going to do higher density, families that already own and want to maybe put some more density on their property. But then you also have renters and the affordability question for many Ontarians that are not owning. Like how do you separate, or how do you balance those competing interests?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, this is exactly why the Ontario Greens were talking about engaging the private sector in solutions and the public sector in solutions. There's some parties will say the private sector is going to solve it all. There are some parties that say the public sector is going to solve it all. It's going to take both, and it's going to take all three levels of government working together. And one of the things that I think you're alluding to is that there are some folks that are like, not in my backyard with any of these things we're talking about. So let's look around the world at best practices. I'm a best practices kind of person. Let's not reinvent the wheel. There are other communities. Minneapolis, Minnesota has probably provided the best example of this, of reforming the public consultation process to not only include existing residents, but potential new residents. And oftentimes when existing residents hear from and see new potential neighbors at these public consultations, they're like, oh, our fears are kind of not, they're not as great as they were before. And we can imagine being neighbors with each other. And when people start thinking like, is a duplex or a triplex really going to change the character of the neighborhood? Probably not. I would encourage people here in Kitchener. I've toured some of the tiny home developments that have happened here in Kitchener. They're fantastic. My gosh. Like I toured one. I'm like, when can I move in? So I think it's just showing people what reimagining how we can build livable, affordable, connected communities. We can't continue to force people to commute 2 to 3 hours just to find an affordable place to call home. We need to have people live close to where they work. And that's where we have thriving communities with successful small businesses.
One of the things, and this is happening more and more. You see more news reports of potential homeowners and they're feeling as though their consumer rights are not being protected. Not being transparent with offers that are coming forward. I know the Ontario Association of Realtors and our friends here from KW. I mean, we've been hearing a lot about that. People calling me up and saying, "Hey, wait, I put it on. I'm not sure I was dealt with fairly." I mean, when we talk about consumer issues around having an ombudsman that actually works and can take those complaints to provide oversight for the RICO is one of the things that I'm hearing more of, not only from our friends at KW Association of Realtors, but others saying like there's got to be some protection here and some transparency. Is that the sort of thing where we not only in that sector but in others we need to have that openness and transparency?
I'm always for more openness and transparency. And I think I've been really proud of the work we did with the Ontario Real Estate Association and consulting with a lot of the local real estate associations as well on our affordable housing strategy, which is why I think they've been so supportive of it because we really consulted widely. But it's also looking at the warranty program for new home buyers, like the whole Terrion situation, which I'm probably getting into the weeds for folks, but we need consumer protection. That system is broken. We need to I support the federal government's pledge to end blind bidding. Let's have more transparency in the system. But the bottom line is we need more supply. Like we just really, like the only way we're going to deal with this is to build more supply, and we have to build that supply in a way that doesn't pave over the farmland that feeds us, the wetlands that clean our drinking water and protect us from flooding, and the green belt and other green spaces that we all love to enjoy. So we can do it. We have the space to do it. We have the innovation and technology to do it. We just need to make sure we have the political will to actually build communities that people can live, work, play, and shop locally.
We talked this morning a little bit about the importance of our post-secondary institutions here in Waterloo Region, not only to the economy, because they in and of themselves are generators of wealth here in the community, but what they mean for innovators and our friends from Google and other places. I mean, they're spinning off the whether it's computer engineer or scientists and whatnot from U of W, but Laurier, the business. I mean, they are driving the talent of the future here in Waterloo Region. One of the things that they also do is, and the business community is starting to do a better job of, is offering experiential learning opportunities so that students actually have some job experience, because not everyone's going to do co-op. That's not going to be possible, but getting people into the work, or students into the workplace, and having small and medium-sized business understand and have some of the benefit of having these institutions here in Waterloo Region. The whole sector is under stress financially. It's been 2 years of COVID, and some would argue before that of tuition freezes, which limits their income, but also freezes from government grants. Understandable because of COVID and the way things were developing in terms of there was nothing but COVID for a period of time. But that sector needs to be supported, not only here in Waterloo Region, but in Guelph and right across the province. Is the post-secondary sector is going to give the talent for the future, but it's also creating some of the innovation that's going to drive businesses to be more productive. as we come out of COVID, how do we support that sector? And again, this is, I'm not immune, but saying there is, everything's an ask right now: healthcare, transportation, greening of the economy, education. But we need to make these investments now if if we're going to see the benefit tomorrow.
Yeah, well, let's hopefully will we have time for a conversation about how to pay for everything?
Yep.
Because I want to
Yep.
have that conversation, but I don't want to take it away from post-secondary
Yep.
education. So we are blessed in Ontario with an incredibly strong post-secondary sector, both the university and colleges. And we are under-resourcing it right now. Ontario has the lowest per capita funding of its post-secondary sector of any province in Canada. So at some point, we're going to hit a breaking point. And I tell you, it's our competitive advantage. Our competitive advantage in Ontario is that we have a diverse, highly skilled, smart, highly trained workforce. And our post-secondary institutions, both universities and colleges, played a critical role there. So what are we going to have to do? The province is going to have to step up and start putting money back into the sector. I mean, it's not just the current government, it was a previous government. Like public funding for universities and colleges now are almost down to like 35% of their budgets. Like it is really hard for them to maintain high quality research and education if we're going to underfund them. At the same time, we have to make sure students can afford to be able to attend post-secondary schools because that's going up as well. And so one of the ways we can do that is actually reverse the cuts that the Ford government brought into OSAP, $750 million their first year. That's grown to almost $2 billion taken out of funding for students. Let's put that money back in. And let's shift that money from loans to grants because so many of those low income students, we don't want them graduating with high debt loads. And then we can say, and then we need to make sure the sector gets properly funded as well. This is critical to our economy. Like I can't emphasize enough how important it is. And one of the things Ontario Greens are proposing, because we know the opportunities in the new climate economy are huge. That's where most of the global investment is going. That's where the new career and good job opportunities are moving forward. We got to skate to where the puck is, not where it was. But we don't have enough skilled labor, particularly in the trade. So we're proposing 60,000 students in this province should get free tuition to go into the trades with a guaranteed 1 year of apprenticeship training so that we have the skilled, trained workforce to make our buildings more energy efficient, to help people save money by saving energy, to ensure that we actually have enough homes for people to live in, to make sure we have the skilled trades for our manufacturing sector to be successful, particularly in these new green technologies where those that are in demand. So let's make sure we have the trained workforce so Ontario can be the global leader in the new climate economy.
Well, you touched on talent because that's, and we will come, make sure we wrap up some of the next few questions into the how do we pay for it or what do we do and what do we not do. Hospitality, Michelle from the Hospitality and Tourism Explore Waterloo has been talking about this and saying reopening is not recovery. Many of the businesses in the sector do not have enough staff right now to fully open anyways. And until you're at 100% capacity, it's hard to get your revenues up to make those investments. And she's been, you know, and Minto, her predecessor, been very clear about that with us. And I think it's brought the notion of how fragile or how critical that talent piece is. One of the things that I think you heard this morning is, and it relates to immigration. I mean, we've had 2 years of basically no one coming into from a business perspective, very few people coming into the country, which is a supply chain of talent. So, you know, bringing in foreign workers and housing and transporting, having transportation available, and doing all the things, healthcare, really important. But we need to have a designated stream, and I think that's what we heard this morning is. Like there would be for the skilled trades with that Clack and Ian and his gang are saying, hey, look, specific for the trades or other designated industries, there's got to be one for the hospitality and tourism sector because we just never get them back on their feet if they don't have the people to do that. So maybe talk about that piece of it because I think it's an immigration and getting new talent in here as well as training up and educating the youth here already in Ontario.
Yeah. So first of all, I think absolutely we have a labor shortage. Like almost every business I talk to is
Yep.
talking about how they're struggling to find enough workers. So we have to work with the federal government to open up immigration, make it easier for qualified immigrants to arrive in Canada. And then Ontario has an obligation to make sure that when they come to this province, we have the right training available. We have actual housing affordability available. Like, it's pretty hard to attract people from other countries to come and work here if they can't afford to live here. We have to make sure they have access to healthcare. Oftentimes there's delays to accessing OHIP and provincial insurance and support systems. We have to make sure the province has all that in place. So when we partner with the federal government on immigration reform, we're able to make sure those workers have jobs, have a place to live, have access to public and social services. And so all that's going to have to be there. And then the other thing I think we have to do is we have to recognize the new Canadians who are already here, who are trained, particularly in the healthcare sector, and who can't practice their skills. And so one of the things, I know the government, I was supportive of the government's bill for foreign credentials when it came to the construction and trades, but we should have applied that to healthcare as well, especially when it comes to the nursing shortage. I know nurses are saying there are all these internationally trained nurses living in Ontario right now, and we're not allowing them to practice. So let's fast track that accreditation to make sure those people can, work in the areas in which they've been trained.
We also have, especially in this part of the world, between Waterloo, Conestoga, Laurier, and Guelph, tens of thousands of foreign students who can be a temporary supply. And I think that's one of the things that I see Michelle vigorously nodding her head over there. But we know that that's an opportunity because they can work up to, I think it's 20 hours a week. So they can, that's another one of those sources of talent that we need to make easier and make more available for foreign students here in Ontario. Let's go to one of the things that is really important, and again, and this is a much a community discussion as well as the important issues for business. The municipalities have been obviously through COVID, and they've been supported by the province and the federal government to a large extent, but it's going to take a while. Much like hospitality and tourism, people are not going to suddenly go back to it's not elastic. They're not going to see the same levels of usage, transport, whether it's on transit for the region, whether it's on parks and rec for local municipalities. Talk about the importance of and the fact that we need to have our municipalities not weakened financially. They need to invest and be ready to, have their staff ready for the investments that need to be made, both in their own infrastructure, but as well as when business needs to do their either invest their capital here or expand their business here. We need to have all of those pieces fully operational and at a peak capacity. Talk about the importance of the municipalities to the recovery that Ontario needs to have. We need to have a strong economy and a strong recovery, and the municipalities are part of that.
Yeah, municipalities are vital to that, and municipal budgets are under so much stress right now, particularly municipalities, larger municipalities with transit systems because of the decline in ridership. But the need to keep the systems going for people has really put stress. The other one is escalating building costs. So a lot of infrastructure, like whether it's recreation centers or other public infrastructure, the costs are going up. And so that's making it much more challenging for municipalities as well. And I'm going to bleed this in a bit to how we're going to pay for it. We have to ensure that the province is there because it has more fiscal capacity to support municipalities. And so we're moving into election season, and there are a lot of election gimmicks floating around out there, whether it's taking $1.1 billion out of the provincial coffers for license stickers. That's $1.1 billion that could be supporting municipalities, supporting new hospitals, supporting healthcare. Now there's reports today of a 6-month holiday on provincial gas tax. That's money that goes directly to municipalities. And my fear is if the province engages in too many of these election gimmicks, I'd rather be honest and frank with people and say, you know what? That revenue right now is needed to ensure that we have the public infrastructure the municipalities provide, the public infrastructure that the province provides. And in the case of municipalities, if we take too much money out of the system, it's all going to get downloaded on the property tax base anyway. And that is the least progressive form of taxation. It is the one that hits people the hardest, and it will actually make the housing affordability crisis even worse, because we know that those property tax hikes hit homeowners and renters both, and small businesses. And so, I just want to, plead with everybody in this province. Let's have an honest conversation about what it's going to take to fund the things we want and need in this province, to build the kind of Ontario we want to build. And I hope you support politicians who are willing to be honest with you, even if it's hard to hear sometimes.
So you started on the how we pay for it. These next two questions, we got 7 minutes left. I'm getting the high sign from my staff, so answer accordingly. But we can't cut our way to prosperity, nor can we tax our way to prosperity. So it needs to be driven by the private sector. I think we need to have, and it means strong civil society, but it also means that we have the opportunity for business to invest, create jobs, and that's how we're gonna come out of this. One of the things my colleague Tony Lamantia, and he's part of our Best Waterloo group, is the shortage of the critical shortage and chronic shortage of large investment ready employment lands in the province, and the importance the province will play in expanding the inventory of shovel ready sites to promote greenfield investment and anchor companies. And we just saw the investment in 4.3 billion in electric batteries in at Windsor Essex. But the province has a strong role to play in that. How do we, what's your plan for making sure that when we have, and this would be part of the greening of the economy and moving into that green economy, that there's places for those businesses to invest and build?
Yeah, well, first of all, austerity, this is not the time for austerity. I think COVID has revealed so many cracks in the foundation, particularly the social supports we need, whether it's funding for education, healthcare, housing affordability, social services, etc. Childcare, we simply cannot cut our way to prosperity. There is no doubt about that. And the key is actually going to be growing our economy. Like, that's really going to be the key. And so where is the economic growth going to happen? It is without a doubt in the new climate economy. That's where global financial capital is going. Ontario is so well positioned to be the global leader, whether it's a mining to manufacturing strategy, not only for electric vehicles, but electric storage to make renewable energy cheaper and more efficient. Electric bikes, my gosh, the market for electric bikes is actually stronger than electric public transit. So we are the capital leader, but it's not just there. It's in this region. It's biosciences, biomedicine. It's tech and innovation. It is bioproducts. My gosh, all these waste products from Ontario farms and the forestry industry can be going into bioplastics, particularly in the automotive sector. We just simply need a provincial government who is going to recognize that these kinds of investments are critical to our economic success. And we need a little bit of seed funding to commercialize and scale. We're really good in Ontario at R&D. We're not very good at commercial and scale. So that's why we've been proposing a $5 billion EV mobility and innovation fund, as well as selling green bonds, $4 billion green bonds, to fund the opportunities to scale and commercialize made in Ontario technology. And it should be purchased by the public sector through public procurement.
Okay, you've read my mind. Last question, and then I'm going to give you 30 seconds to wrap up. Procurement, supporting Ontario business, incredibly important. The business community stepped up when we didn't have PPE in this region. We went from 0 companies that did PPE of a variety of different sorts to over 80 in the matter of months, and that was led by Tony Lamantia and a lot of the folks at the region, pulling those folks together. Getting that first contract from the province, there's billions of dollars of procurement, and not enough Ontario companies are getting those. It seems to be that it's almost harder to get an Ontario government contract than it is to go to foreign countries, to do it in New York State or across Europe. We know that PPE example is we can do anything, and we need the provincial government to support Ontario industry. Not a leg up, a level playing field. And we can still do that and respect our trade agreements because we're a trading nation. So I guess the question, how do you support Ontario industry? Because I recall I was 12 years ago starting, and John Malloy was the minister of and he did a hell of a job. He pulled a whole bunch of people and said, we're going to make sure small business get access to procurement contracts. It's almost like the caramel secret. No one knows how to unlock it. So is that going to be a priority for you to support? Again, it's innovators, it's new business, it's small business. Is that going to be a focus for you?
Absolutely. I mean, prior to me going into politics, public procurement was what I was working on. In this case, the food sector, trying to get Ontario institutions to actually commit to buying food grown in Ontario. Public procurement is huge. It's one of the reasons that a lot of innovation is able to, again, commercialize and scale in the US much faster than in Canada. And a lot of that actually is through Department of Defense procurement. So we don't have a big DoD budget, but we still procure, the public sector procures billions of dollars worth of goods. So changing the procurement rules to allow small businesses to be able to bid, to give points for Ontario-made, Ontario-based companies is huge. And those procurement processes need to be changed in a way so the point system creates a level playing field for Ontario businesses, and they need to be simplified so that small businesses can actually access it.
We're like literally a minute left, so we got to 30 seconds. What can people expect from Mike Schreiner after the provincial election?
So I'm looking forward and excited to have a caucus of Green MPPs. I think a lot of people have said that one Green MPP has had a disproportionate influence in the Ontario legislature. We've punched well above our weight. We've delivered for the people of Ontario. I've been able to work across party lines to get things done. Imagine what would happen if we have a caucus of Green MPPs. And, we're going to prioritize economic prosperity in the new climate economy. We're going to address the housing affordability crisis because we know the economic and just quality of life issues, that implications that has for people. And you know what? We're going to finally invest in mental health and actually deliver on the saying that mental health is health, because that's the shadow pandemic we're all been facing. And it has huge implications on the success of business and quality of life in our communities.
Listen, thanks so much, Mike. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. Someone did tell me that there is an election coming, although it hasn't started yet, but it's not clear to me that it hasn't started. That's all the time we have today. I've got a small token of our appreciation. Maybe it's outside with Dana, but of some goodies from Waterloo Region. Thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to hosting you again soon. Again, just as we wrap up, thanks to our sponsors, our title sponsor, Manulife, our prestige sponsor, Deloitte, our platinum sponsor, Google, our silver sponsor, Clack, our bronze sponsor is KW Association of Realtors, our event partner, the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, and our host, Crown Plaza KW. And of course, a special thanks to all of you for attending today, both online and in person, and for your continued support to make these events possible. We have one more event. We're still in the process of tracking down the Premier's office, but we'll expect to have that momentarily. There's lots of events happening. For all future events, please go to greaterkwchamber.com. Thanks very much and have a great morning.
Ian, thanks for inviting me. Thanks all of you for coming, and thanks to the sponsors.
Thanks. That was great.